That's the grid. And of course, the chart will do charts and pivot will do pivots. But if I choose the page designer, which I'm doing now, and I refresh that web page, what's happening now is because I haven't done a design, Sharperlight just created a standard design for us. So it looks very similar to the first one. That's HTML, so it's showing in the browser. And if I change it again to PDF, now what's going to happen is stack the filters, so they look a bit better. So now we get a filter one on a row. And now I've set it to page PDF. Straight away, I get a PDF report. Let's have a look to see what it's done. At the moment, there are no designs, so Sharperlight made this design for you. But if I edit it, it will set that design up for us. So put a title up here, and it used a table. So I think it's this one here. And it's very similar to Crystal Reports. If you've used Crystal Reports, this would be familiar. You can create subtotals and detail sections, and you have a header section, a detail section, and a footer section. And if I want a field, I can choose from the list here and then preview. Right. I could start changing this design. For example, I'll set the background color. Let's change that. Okay. I'll just explain about this side here. This is a tree, and it shows you the different sections of the report. So up the top here, we have the header. So there's that section, there's the header, and this is for the details. And then finally down the bottom here, we have the footer. So if I wanted to put some text into the footer, let's drag out a text box. Now, because it's the footer, when I look at this section here, you can see all the different types of things I can put into that text box, like the page number, etc. But if you look at the grid on the side, you get more options. If I look at the value, I could say like this, and then that will be fixed. And if I want to change the font size, make that bigger. So now I have that, and then I have that section down the bottom, and then I go to the next page. So the header repeats and the footer repeats. And then this section here is the details. So do we have any questions about that so far?
Okay, so my question was, is it also possible to just type in the text box and in the value field on the right side of the screen?
Here it is here. Yeah. I type that in. Now I can also use the drop down, and instead of doing text, I can reference fields, and I can also use expressions.
Okay.
And do calculations. These here are also text boxes. You see how they say TX, but instead of using constants, they're referring to a field. If I come up to format, at the moment the format is N. You can see there's a preview of the format. But if I was to say decimal places 4, so now we will have 4 decimal places. Now Sharperlight gives you own variables. So if I have a look at the title up the top here, it says parameter item report title. So in Publisher, I gave that a report title. I don't have to hard code it here. I can just say whatever the report title is. So let's have a look at the list here, expressions. And if I come to parameters, you can see that Sharperlight's put report title, report description, the user, the author, version, when the report was modified, things like that. And over on the side here, Sharperlight's already created expression. So we have a look at this expression. So it says equals, and then in quotes, page. We use the global variables for the page number, so that common values, yes. So here we got like the page number and the total number of pages. So it's a expression, just like you would do in Excel. So we're saying page and the current page number of, and then the total number of pages. When we preview it, there's page 1 of 85. If I was to, I'll delete this table. I'll do it again. So there's my table. There's nothing in it. I would say, type in here, account. This will be period. This will be amount. And then for the detail, I would select the account code. That's the account period, and that's the amount. And of course, I'd need to set the formatting and the background colors. And I preview, and you can see I'm starting to build up the report. What I'll do now is I'll talk about when you want to do a letter, send out a document to a person. So what I'll do is I'll go to the example I prepared just before this meeting, and this one was all about how to do a document. I'm using SAP Business One for this, but I chose a particular account and account name. So here we have the account name, the balance. I formatted the balance as well. And when I came to the page design, I did it a little bit different. Initially, when I came in here, there was a table and I deleted it. Instead of the table, what I did was I used this object here called formatted text. And what that does is it lets me use HTML, create a document. It can take HTML, you can do a mail merge to put values into the HTML. But first of all, you come to the property called HTML, which is here. I'll just edit that. I've just typed in some basic HTML. So I go HTML, body, I close off the tags. So this part here is the mail merge. It's substituting the value in here. So it goes dear, and then whatever the customer name is, account. So I just call that field 1. Account balance field 2, just done another one there for formatted balance. So let's have a look at the fields and where they're defined. So here it says mail merge fields. Here I can say field 1 is the account code, field 2 is the amount, and I've just done some formatting on it. And here's another field 3, which is amount formatted using Sharperlight expressions. And then down here we've got a client name. So if I was to add another one to the list, I'd go click on add. It says field 4. What is field 4? Field 4 is the posting date, like that. So I can give it a different name if I want to. Do we have any questions about that?
So is this the preferred way to do it with HTML?
This is one way. We've got another way of doing it. I preview this. There's the HTML that we just saw, and down below is a second option. Before I go to the second option, I'll explain a little bit more about the HTML option. Yeah. So the idea is you create the HTML, and then you create the mail merge fields, and you place them where you want those fields to appear in the HTML. Does that make sense to everyone?
So you create the query, create an HTML kind of placeholder, and then create your fields to link the fields to the output fields in the query. Is that right?
Yes. I used a bit of HTML to say that's bold, that B means bold, and BR means line break. So when I was doing this, I had a look at the online help, this control. So the control that it's using is called active reports, and we're using the formatted text. So I did a Google search on active reports, formatted text, and that gave me the syntax to say, oh, look, if you're using formatted text, you want to put your mail merge fields inside the HTML. This is the syntax here. So it just with these percentages, etc. They don't support everything. And if I was to make a mistake, normally HTML is very forgiving. But if I did something like div, I forgot to close the div, I would get an error. So I'll just do that. And you see how I get an error now? Because it's very strict. You have to have proper HTML for this to work. Now, because it just substitutes values in, it doesn't do formatting for you. So I'll talk about formatting now. For the numbers, field 2 and 3. So if I go to mail merge fields, and I go to number 2, this is using the amount that's not formatted. So what I did was the page designer has its own expressions that are not Sharperlight, and so I used this string format, and I said British pound sterling, and then I use this format here, so 2 decimal places, and then the amount. It uses the standard .NET formatting function. So let's just have a look at VB.NET string format. So they use .NET, and so that's the function they use for their formatting. So if you have a look at this, it's got various examples of how they're formatting. So here we're saying the current price is, and then we have currency 2, and that's what it looks like when it renders. So that's what I did there. If that's too hard to remember, what you could do is use Sharperlight to format the value for you. And in that case, you just need to reference the value and it's already formatted for you. So I'll just talk about that now. Let's come to our query. You can see I have the account name, posting date, amount. To make the amount formatted, I created an expression. In the Sharperlight expressions, there's a function called format, and that's what I used. So for example, if I look at this one here, so that's going to remove the decimal places. So n, and if I want 2 decimal places, I do n2. So very similar to the page designer in that regard. So here I said British pound sterling plus, and then format n2 means 2 decimal places, and then I set this as text. So that way you can format the dates and the numbers, and I've called this amount formatted. In the mail merge, that's what I use for that version, so I didn't have to remember how to format it using Page Designer. What I'd like to do now is I'll just show you this document in the web. Right, so there's it rendered as PDF. So there's the first example. Next, I'm going to show you the second example. This first example is using HTML, and this second example will use just text. If your doc doesn't have lots of changing text and it's just a simple document, you can do most of it using this second option. So I'll edit the query, the page design again. This time, instead of using formatted text, I used text and I dragged it out like this. Next, what I did was from the query, the fields in the query, I want to use the field called document text. If I did account code or account name, it would just be one value. But in my query, I defined a block of text and I basically did the whole document there. So in here, all I have to do is reference that. So I'll preview it again. So have a look at this. So we've got Dear Buildings, account balance is this, regards accounts. So let's have a look at the query. Come back here. So what I did was I created an expression that took the account and the amount formatted and combined it as one big text block. And this is what it looks like. So these brackets up the top here say that let's make a big block of text and we'll call it my name. So you can type in as much text as you like between these two sections. So I've gone dear and then I've gone %1. It doesn't have to be this, it could be whatever you like. But down here, replacing %1 with the account name, and then it's replacing %2 with the formatted number. So if I don't want to call it %1, I could have said it, look, it's account name like this. So I'd have to come up here and say, look, we need to look for %name, account name, and replace that. Now, I found this template by a search on template, and here's text block with reference. So that's the template that I use to get things going. So I just did that, and it gives me your text like that. And I think there's another template here. Yeah, so here's one, and it's got a variable name, and then you just put your text between there, and then you get your variable name and start replacing values inside that text block. Right, so do we have any questions about the second option?
With that expression there, Ivan, do you, for each one that you want to replace, you create a new replace command for each replacement, and then ensure that the brackets close off after each one, separated by a comma on each line?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So I have two, one here and one here. So I have two. If I add another one, I would do something like this. I'd do another replace, and then I would
and then change the details. Yeah. Okay.
Let's say the period.
Okay.
So I've set in the period, and I'd say %3.
3. Yeah.
It's all good. So let's have a look at this now. So now we've got the period in there.
Yeah.
The benefits of the HTML is that you can do bold.
I have a question. Is there a maximum length to your letter, or a maximum amount of replacements that you can do?
No.
Or can you just create your letter as long as you want it to be?
As long as you want to, with as many replaces as you want.
Okay.
Right. You can also break up your letter into sections. So what I'll do is I'll clone this now. So which one do you think you would use, the HTML or the text?
I think people would use the second one.
Okay, let's talk about that one
more often, but it would be nice to practice with the HTML also to also be able to use that in the future.
Yeah, the HTML is more challenging because if you make a mistake, it just says error. And so
you have to find the error yourself, or can you see where the error is? Oh,
no, you have to find the error yourself. With the text, if all the text has the same formatting, then the text is quite easy to use. So you just define your text here. Maybe you've got 3 sections of text, and I'll show you how you can break it up into sections. So imagine you've got like the address and things like that. So if I've got another area, so let's say I'm going to get rid of that one now, and I'm just going to use text alone. I could, for example, do something like this. So the first text one, notice that I've got control over the formatting now. So I can say what size the font is. So I'll say that this is bold, and I come to value, and I'm going to say it's dear, and I'm going to say whatever the account name is. that. So here I've just got one section that's a different format to this section. So you could have, for example, the address, and then you could have the body of the document, and then you could have another section down the bottom, and they have different fonts and different font sizes. So everything that's in one text box is the same font and the same font size. So that's your limitations. What I'll do now is I'll just add some more text to show you how big this section can be. There's my document. So I'll just put some more text in here. So preview this. All right, so you can see it's much longer now. So that can be basically as long as you like. The next question is, when you send out the letters, what is the process for sending letters? Is it a scheduled process, or is it something that you kick off manually?
I think the letters get sent manually.
But would
Right.
you run it for multiple recipients at the same time, Ayrton?
Yes, it would be multiple recipients.
But the process
Right.
would be to run the report, let's call it that, for multiple clients at the same time and generate one letter for each client.
Yes.
Let's just imagine that we run the report and it has all the clients that we want to send the letter to, similar to like an age data report. And we do a formatted text to do the body of the document.
Yeah.
And just imagine that we've got those. Save this one. I'll preview this. All right, so I said let's only do the first 10. So when we do the page design this time, cutting my design, I don't need the table, so I delete that. What I'm going to do is I'll put my text box here, and this text box, it would normally be something like the formatted text body, but I'm not going to spend time showing that again. I'm just going to, I'm down to the value, and I'm going to do something like, now, if I was to do this, and I was to preview it, so there's the account, but you notice that there's only one page.
Yeah.
What we want is a page for each account, right? So if we use scheduler, we could do this. We could call the page designer once for each account using query combinations. So there's a video on that. If you watch the video on scheduling, you can loop around for each client account and then call your published report and pass it the account that you want to run it for. And then that can save as a PDF, and then it'll call the next one. And each one is a separate file. But let's look at how we could do it in Page Designer. So if we look at this, this is basically the first account. Private table. So if I make this the size, I'm just using the table, and then I'll put a container in there, and then I'll put a text box, and there's the account, and I'll put another text box down there, and that'll be the description. And let's preview that. Okay, you can see how I used the table, and then in the table I put a container, and then I started putting the text boxes in different locations. That's the first page, that's the second one, and there's the third. So if I make this high enough, I can get this fit on one page. So that's enough to fit on one page. So the end result is that I get one for every row in our data set. So that's one way I can have one report with many pages or many documents. other way it can be done is through using the scheduler query combinations. Let's have a look at some of the training examples. So here we have, this one's sending emails, but it could save the PDF to the file system. So this is scheduler, and the first task is getting the, let's think of it as getting the accounts. So if there's 10 accounts that we need to run, it will get the first account. And then here is our published report. So there's our code for our report. And over here is where we can pass the parameters that report. So in your case, it'll be the customer account code that will be passed into the filters. So basically, we're looping around for each account and running the published report for just that account. And then over here, it's saving it to a PDF. So you get one PDF for each account. So if I have a look at the query combinations, this is just a query. In this case, it's using companies, but so we have a company name and an email address for this example, but you can change it to get the customers that you want to target. Instead of emailing, you could just leave it in the file system. If you want to combine them into a single PDF, what you can do is loop around, save to a PDF. You see how there's a option here to append? So what you can do there is each time it loops around, you add one more page to the existing PDF if you use this append. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so instead of creating separate files, it's just going to run the query and then keep adding it as a new page in the same PDF document.
Yes, and that simplifies your page design, because then you don't have to use that last option where I created a table and inside the table was a container and then there was text boxes. You could say the page design only does one page and you pass to the filters just one account. Time for questions.
Do you have an example of this?
I'll use the video because in the video it actually shows the output.
Okay. Oh, then we can check it in the video then.
I think there it is here. So here's in the example, it's sending an email with the PDF attached here.
Yes.
So that if we looked at the PDF, it would be whatever, like our example we did earlier. There it is there.
Okay.
Right, and the next question.
I had a question, Ivan. So in the previous example with the formatted text, we said we can split it up into different areas. So one scenario, I guess, is as long as you have all of the information in that one query, then you would have for each distinct block of text you wanted to have in the page designer, then you would do a different formatted text expression for each one. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
So we'd have the address section as what all of the fields are in the main query and the outputs, but then let's say maybe you wanted to put the address in a text box at the top, and then you've got the body of the text in a different one, and then like a closing text or whatever. So you'd have three expressions combining those fields in different ways, and then in the page designer you'd have three. I forget the name now. I forget the name of the text box, the control, but you'd have three text boxes there.
Yes. So now there's another way. You see in Publisher you have a main query. Sometimes you want to get other details.
Yeah, that was going to be where I was going next. So, for example, if all of the information is not in the main query, but for example, I think in some of the letters, they basically have some fields. Yes, they've got the address, and then they maybe got an introduction, the customer name, etc., etc. But then in the middle of the report, there's basically a table, which is maybe the summary of the products that they have insured. Maybe that table is produced by a different query to give them
When I come to Page Designer, I can create more queries here.
Yeah.
So I'll create a new query, and I'll call this account address. And I'm starting a new query, and this time I'll go to Chart of Accounts, and I'll get the account code, account description, etc.
Yeah.
And here you see the account name is ACC account code, which is the same as the, well, it should be the same filter name as the other query. If it has the same name, whatever the filter is in the main query will be passed into here.
Right.
So if I do that, now I have my main query, and then I have query 2. So if I check this account code, so that whatever I set in here will be synchronized here because it has the same name. So when I edit my design, now I have 2 sets of queries that I can choose from. Here's query 1 and here's query 2.
Right. So the address part could be a formatted text, and then you'd have some boilerplate text, and then you'd have maybe a table which contains the results of the subquery.
What I recommend is that you don't use this approach, but use the other approach where you do one account at a time.
And then split it out with the scheduler.
Yes. So that's coming back to this design here. So we do one account at a time.
Yeah.
I think that's more manageable. There's quite a few options for triggering the scheduled jobs. So this scheduled job, if I create a shortcut on my desktop like that, I can just click on the shortcut and it will, so that created a shortcut. If I click on that, it will run that job. And in the training videos, it shows also how you can click on a button in a web page and have that pass parameters and kick off the job as well.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is it possible to use multiple tables or for one letter? Is it or data from multiple tables or databases?
From different products, right?
Yes. You saw before that I added a new query down the bottom, and this one's using SAP Business One, but I could go to something else, so a totally different system, and so that it synchronizes, I would probably make a filter up the top to say, well, this is my account code. I want to make sure it's for the same account code, so I'd give that the same filter name so that it picks up the same filter criteria as the main query. So if the main query said do account 500, then this also gets account 500 and it does something with it. But it's a different system.
So as long as there's a unique field, is what you're saying. You're saying so as long as there's a unique field in both systems that you can link on, and you give the filters in the subquery the same name as the filters in the main query.
Correct.
Then it will work.
The only exception is maybe you've got a query that gets the legal information and it's always the same location, so you don't need to synchronize because it's just legal, the standard paragraph for your documents, maybe.
Is it correct that you can only use subquery for multiple tables or databases?
That's the way you create other data sets. The other way is you create a subquery in here.
Okay. A subquery in the output or a subquery in the page designer?
Correct.
Okay.
This one can have multiple rows, whereas the other one has one row.
So it's better to use the subquery in the page designer?
Yes.
Instead of the output.
Yeah. So you could have an invoice or a statement, and you could have this. The main query gets the account address, and then this query gets the invoice details or statement details, and then another query gets the legal document to put it to say, please pay by 30 days, etc., etc.
Okay.
So you would store that legal text in a field somewhere in a database as well, instead of having it in the reports?
I would put it in the reports, but sometimes clients have document management systems where they say it must be from there because that changes.
Right.
But I think you would just type it in your case. But if I had 20 page designs and they all shared a common bit of text, well, maybe it should be in a database, so you could use system properties and have it stored in one location, and you change that one location and all your legal documents change at the same time.
So what do you mean, put it in a custom table or in something else?
If it's just a paragraph, well, then you could use system properties. Okay. So I'll show you system properties. Here it is here. So let's click new, and I'll say this is legal note. Please save. So now I have some text here that I can query and use for many locations. So I go close and come down to here. I'll do a legal system properties and legal note, and I want the value. So here it is here. So now if I change that system property, all the reports, if I have many reports, they'll all change as well.
Yeah.
The other way I could have used that was in the main query. I could have done this. Property and a legal note. So I can also use that as an expression. Get it. There it is there.
Yeah.
So instead of using this type of deal, I can use a system property, get it, and then maybe replace some values inside that text block. These are good for templates. I think if you have a look at the videos first on Page Designer, because it'll show you how to do company branding and the basics like formatting, and then Scheduler.
I had a quick question on logos, Ivan. Would you also store, for example, a company logo as a system property if you needed to reuse it in multiple places?
System properties are basically text or numbers or dates, so they're not logos.
Okay.
Have a look at the training video on Page Designer, because I do cover how to do that. So just quickly touching on it, you simply import the image into Page Designer. There's an image here somewhere. There it is there. And then we can import. So that currently it's external. You can say it's embedded. And you basically bring that image in. First of all, you've got to come up to here and embedded images. You add an image and you import it from a file. And then once it's imported into here, I can bring the image into here.
Okay. So can you store them in a central location so you can reuse them in more than one report?
Not if you use this method. You're importing it just for this report.
As a one-off, yeah.
I was talking to another partner today and showing them how they can bring images from the Sharperlight RESTful service and also from the database. That's more involved because you would need to have a look at the article on Sharperlight branding. So you would put your images into the branding location, and then you would have a URL address that would point to the image, and you would pass that to the image object in Page Designer, and you would say, look, it's a URL address, and can you get it? But it's more involved than just bringing the image in.
Okay, so
We've got some examples here from earlier today. Well, let's just see if I can find them. Page designer image. So here's a URL, and it could be that custom branding location. And here's HTML for turning that into an image. So if I preview, it looks like this. So there's the code, and there's the URL address, and then there's the image. So that's a PDF. This particular client had scanned invoices, and they wanted to bring documents out of their system. So it wasn't branding, it was actually a scan of the invoice.
I have a question about adding hyperlinks to a letter. Is is that also simple to do? Just copy and put the hyperlink in the text, and then and if you want to show it as maybe a word or a sentence, is that easy to do?
It's covered in the videos.
It's also in the videos. Okay.
Yes, that one's in the pivot. I think it's in the second video. So you design a data set, and when you do your page design, I'll show you where you can start looking. Like if I was to click on this, each element of the report has an action. You can also create bookmarks, but if I look at the action, I can say, if I click on this section, I want to jump to a URL address, and that URL address can be based on expression. So maybe you have a URL address to a Sharperlight report, and one of the parameters is the account code. You would do that here, and when you click on it, you will jump to that Sharperlight report for that account. Or maybe it'll open up, if you've got a document management system, it creates a URL that will open up inquiry for that account. Any other questions?
So I think the key thing is maybe with the splitting of the letters across multiple customers, for example, to do it with scheduler. It sounds easier, right, Ivan?
Yes.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're not going to send the one document to all clients. It needs to be separated.
Yeah.
And if you did one page design that did multiple clients, well, then the next problem is that you're going to have to break the documents up if you want to email them. If you're printing them, well, that's different. You could do it, but I'm assuming that probably the PDF would be emailed, and in which case the scheduled example in the video would be perfect.